Decisions were made without your awareness. Your name came up and heaven ruled in your favor. Chosen one, this moment was not random and you are not here by accident. Something ancient and intentional has been unfolding behind the veil of your everyday life. While you were questioning, enduring, surviving nights no one ever saw, heaven was investigating your story. Every tear, every silent battle, every time you felt overlooked or misunderstood was being carefully weighed. And now at this precise moment, the sound of your name has echoed in places you've never seen, but have always belonged to. There have been seasons when confusion wrapped around you like fog, when your spirit felt stretched between light and shadow. You sensed you were called for more, yet the path seemed delayed, hidden, even blocked. Chosen one, that tension you felt was not failure, it was preparation. The resistance, the pressure, the feeling of being different without knowing why, those were signs. Signs that your life was under divine review. Signs that what you carry could not be rushed or exposed too early. You've survived battles you never announced. You smiled while breaking. You kept moving while your heart asked unanswered questions. And still, something inside you refused to die. That was not strength alone. That was heaven protecting its investment. While others counted you out, while doors closed and voices doubted, discussions were happening beyond time. Your name was spoken with purpose. Your future was handled with care. And chosen one, before we go deeper, pause for a moment, hit subscribe, and comment "I received this" if your spirit is already responding. Because this message is about to speak directly to you. This is not just a video, it is alignment, it is participation. It is a signal that you are ready to hear what was once kept hidden. Feel the shift right now. That quiet stirring in your chest is recognition. You are remembering who you are. Heaven does not argue over what has no value. Heaven does not deliberate over what has no destiny. The fact that your name was discussed is proof that your life carries weight, meaning, and divine intention. Chosen one, the timing of this message is not late, it is precise. And as we move forward, a truth long concealed is about to step into the light. One that will explain the delays, the pain, and the calling you could never escape. Chosen one, there is a reason heaven leaned in when you thought no one was listening. Heaven does not respond first to noise, performance, or perfection. It responds to endurance. The kind of endurance that doesn't announce itself. The kind that survives in silence. When your prayers felt incomplete, when words failed you, when all you could do was breathe and keep moving. That was still speaking. That was still faith. And heaven heard it clearly. You see, the moments that marked you most were not the days you felt powerful or confident. They were the nights you stayed faithful while feeling empty. Nights when you questioned your purpose but refused to quit. Days when obedience felt heavier than rebellion. You didn't understand the direction, yet you kept walking. You didn't see the outcome, yet you stayed aligned. Chosen one, that is not weakness. That is spiritual authority being formed quietly. Have you ever wondered why you were able to endure what should have broken you? Why you kept showing up even when joy was gone? Why something inside you kept whispering, "Don't stop," even when your mind was tired of believing? That wasn't habit. That wasn't coincidence. That was heaven watching how you handled pressure without applause. Heaven was observing your posture when no reward was visible. Endurance is not passive. It is active trust under strain. It is choosing alignment while confused. It is continuing forward without clarity. And heaven responds to that because endurance proves readiness. It proves that you can carry weight without becoming bitter, that you can wait without becoming hard, that you can suffer without losing compassion. Many can shine when life is easy, but few remain pure when life is heavy. You did. Chosen one, silence did not mean absence. Heaven does its deepest work quietly. While you felt overlooked, your consistency was being recorded. While others were rushing ahead, your patience was being strengthened. While you were tempted to give up, your restraint was shaping your future authority. Do you realize how rare it is to stay faithful when nothing makes sense? Do you understand how valuable that is in the spiritual realm? This is why heaven responds, not to how loudly you asked, but to how long you endured. Not to how strong you appeared, but to how steady you remained. Endurance is proof that your faith was real even when it wasn't rewarded yet. It shows that you weren't serving an outcome. You were aligned with truth. And now, chosen one, the same endurance that once felt like delay is becoming the reason doors begin to open. What you survived quietly has positioned you loudly in the unseen. Heaven does not forget those who keep walking in the dark without demanding light. So ask yourself gently, what if the very season you thought was draining you was actually qualifying you? What if heaven responded not when you cried out, but when you refused to quit? Stay with me, because this endurance you carried is only the beginning of what is about to be revealed. Chosen one, there were qualifications placed on your life long before you ever realized you were being prepared. While you thought you were simply surviving, heaven was shaping you with precision. Nothing you endured was wasted. Nothing was random. The pain you questioned, the delays you resented, the waiting you didn't understand, all of it was quietly forming credentials no classroom could ever give you. You didn't learn empathy from books. You learned it through heartbreak, through being misunderstood, through feeling the weight of other people's emotions because you knew what it felt like to be unseen. That softness in your spirit, that ability to sense when someone is hurting even when they say nothing, that became a qualification. Heaven trusts those who have suffered without becoming cruel. Can you see now why your heart stayed tender even when life tried to harden it? Your discernment too was sharpened in disappointment. Every letdown trained your eyes to see beyond words. Every broken promise taught you to read energy, intention, and silence. You began noticing what others missed, not because you wanted to, but because experience trained you to. Chosen one, that wasn't skepticism. That was wisdom forming under pressure. Heaven often develops discernment in environments where deception is present, because clarity is born when illusion falls away. And then there was the waiting, the long stretches where nothing seemed to move, where progress felt invisible, where you wondered if you were forgotten. But waiting formed humility in you, not the kind that shrinks, but the kind that grounds. You learned patience without entitlement. You learned to trust timing instead of forcing outcomes. You learned how to surrender control without losing vision. That too is a rare qualification. Have you ever asked yourself why you didn't rush ahead like others? Why shortcuts never sat right with your spirit? Why success without alignment felt empty to you? That wasn't lack of ambition, it was preparation. Heaven was teaching you how to carry influence without losing yourself, how to rise without forgetting where you came from. Chosen one, you were never sidelined. You were being trained in hidden places. While others were being seen, you were being shaped. While others were being celebrated, you were being strengthened. Heaven often prepares its vessels in obscurity so their foundation can withstand visibility. Now the pieces begin to connect. The empathy, the discernment, the humility, they weren't accidental traits. They were requirements, qualifications placed on your life quietly, intentionally, lovingly. So ask yourself now, what if the very traits you once saw as weaknesses are the reason you were trusted with this calling? What if you were prepared without being informed because the assignment required depth, not speed? Stay attentive, chosen one, because what qualified you in secret is about to speak for you in the open, and heaven never misplaces its investment. Chosen one, there was a moment you never witnessed, a decision made beyond time and space, where your life was examined with perfect clarity. While you were living day by day, carrying questions you couldn't answer, heaven was holding court, not to judge you harshly, but to understand your alignment, not to measure your perfection, but to weigh your intention. And when everything was reviewed, a ruling was made in your favor. This was not a courtroom filled with accusation, but one filled with truth. Every unseen act of integrity mattered. Every time you chose restraint over reaction, every time you stayed honest when compromise was easier, every time you obeyed what felt right, even when it cost you, those moments spoke. Heaven does not overlook what happens when no one is watching. In fact, that is where the most powerful evidence is found. You may have thought your mistakes disqualified you. You may have believed the delays were signs of denial. But chosen one, heaven does not rule based on flawlessness. It rules based on posture. on whether your heart leaned toward truth even when you stumbled, on whether your spirit stayed open, teachable, and sincere. Can you feel the relief in that? That you were not measured by your worst moments, but by your deepest intentions? The opposition against you was not ignored. Every resistance, every unexplained setback, every attack that came without warning was carefully weighed. Heaven saw how much pressure you carried and how little recognition you received. It saw how often you kept going without answers. And instead of counting that against you, it counted it as evidence. Evidence that you could withstand weight. Evidence that you could remain aligned under strain. This ruling shifted things you couldn't see. Doors that remained closed were not rejection. They were protection until the verdict was complete. Delays were not punishment. They were timing adjustments. Heaven was ensuring that when movement began, it would be irreversible. Do you see now why some things never worked no matter how hard you tried? It wasn't resistance. It was the court preserving the outcome. Chosen one, when heaven rules, it does not need to announce itself immediately. The decision precedes the manifestation. What was settled in the unseen begins to echo slowly into the visible. You may feel it now as a subtle release, a quiet lifting, a sense that something heavy has shifted even if nothing looks different yet. That is the after effect of a ruling being enforced. So ask yourself, what if the delays were never denial? What if the opposition never had the final word? What if your assignment was protected long before you were aware it was under review? Stay with this moment, because once a ruling is made in heaven, change is no longer a question of if, only of when. And chosen one, the timing is already in motion. Chosen one, when things begin to change, it may feel sudden to you, but in heaven nothing is rushed. What you experience as an abrupt shift is often the final movement of a process that has been unfolding quietly for a long time. Heaven works in layers, not chaos. And once a ruling is made, change no longer asks for approval from circumstances, people, or even your past. For a long season, it looked like delay. Days passed, prayers echoed, and nothing moved. But delay was never absence. It was timing. Heaven was aligning details you could not see, repositioning people you never met, removing obstacles before they became threats. What felt like stillness was recalibration. Like an arrow being pulled back, the pause was not a stop. It was preparation for release. Have you noticed how quickly things can shift once they begin? A door opens unexpectedly. A conversation changes everything. A burden lifts without explanation. That is not coincidence. That is the visible effect of something already settled in the unseen. Once heaven finalizes a matter, movement follows naturally. Resistance loses its authority. Barriers lose their power. And what once felt impossible begins to flow. Chosen one, sudden change is not instability. It is precision. It happens because the conditions are finally right. Your character has caught up to your calling. Your endurance has met its assignment. Your heart is ready to steward what is coming. Heaven does not release blessings early. It releases them on time. Can you feel how different this season is? How the weight you carried no longer presses the same way? You may be tempted to question why it didn't happen sooner, why you had to wait so long. But timing protects what acceleration would destroy. If things had moved before the ruling, you would have been exposed instead of established. Now, movement does not drain you, it strengthens you. Now, progress does not confuse you, it confirms you. When change begins, it often feels effortless compared to the struggle before it. That is how you know it is divinely led. You are no longer forcing alignment. You are responding to it. Heaven has already gone ahead of you, clearing space, softening resistance, and opening paths that were once blocked. So ask yourself gently, what if this sudden shift is not surprising heaven at all? What if it was written into your timeline long before you noticed the change? Stay aware, chosen one, because when heaven moves, it moves completely. And what begins now will not reverse. It will only unfold step by step, exactly as it was scheduled. Chosen one, take a slow breath here, because this is where the weight begins to lift. For so long, it felt like everything required effort. Every step forward met resistance. Every decision carried pushback. Even your growth felt contested. That kind of constant pressure does something to the soul. It exhausts you in ways sleep cannot fix. But hear this gently and clearly. Certain resistance has reached the end of its assignment in your life. Not all resistance is punishment. Some of it was shaping. It strengthened your discernment, sharpened your boundaries, and taught you how to stand without becoming rigid. But resistance is not meant to stay forever. Heaven never intended for you to live in perpetual opposition. There comes a moment when what once trained you must step aside. And chosen one, that moment is now unfolding. The cycles that kept repeating, the same misunderstandings, the same emotional battles, the same internal questioning, they no longer have legal access to you. You may have noticed it subtly. The triggers don't hook you the same way. The old fears don't speak as loudly. The patterns that once pulled you back feel tired. That's because their time is up. They taught what they needed to teach, and now they must release you. Have you wondered why certain struggles feel weaker lately, even before they fully disappear? Why your reactions are calmer, your response is more grounded? That's not because you're ignoring reality. It's because your authority has increased. Resistance recognizes when it no longer has permission to stay. Heaven has revoked access to what overstayed its purpose. Even the internal battles, the ones no one ever saw, are shifting. The voice of self-doubt that once questioned everything is losing clarity. The inner conflict that kept you divided is resolving. Alignment brings peace, not because life becomes easy, but because opposition no longer defines your direction. You are no longer fighting to prove who you are becoming rooted in it. Chosen one, this does not mean you will never face challenges again. It means the kind of resistance that drained you is ending, the kind that confused you, the kind that delayed you unnecessarily. What remains now will be constructive, not consuming, stretching, not suffocating. You are stepping into a season where growth feels supported instead of opposed. So ask yourself, what if you no longer need to brace for impact? What if peace is not something you chase, but something you're finally allowed to keep? Let go of the expectation of struggle. Let go of the identity built around surviving. That chapter has served its purpose. Stay present here, chosen one. Because when resistance ends, movement begins differently. Lighter, clearer, more intentional. And what releases you now is making room for what is about to open next. Chosen one, as resistance releases its grip, something gentle yet powerful begins to open. Not with noise, not with force, but with clarity. This is how access arrives, quietly, precisely, almost effortlessly. What once felt distant now feels near. What once felt confusing now begins to make sense. This is the doorway of alignment, and you are stepping toward it naturally. The first access that opens is clarity. Not just answers, but understanding. You begin to see why certain things never worked and why others were delayed. The fog lifts, not all at once, but enough for you to move without fear. Your intuition sharpens. Your decisions feel lighter. Have you noticed how you no longer overthink the way you used to? That is clarity settling in. Heaven is speaking in a language your spirit can finally hear. With clarity comes favor, not the kind that creates pride, but the kind that creates ease. Conversations flow differently. Opportunities appear without striving. People begin to respond to you with unexpected openness. Favor is not about being elevated above others. It's about being supported where you are. Doors open because alignment makes them recognize you. You're no longer knocking, you're being welcome. Rest also becomes accessible in a way you've rarely known. Not just physical rest, but soul rest. The kind that allows you to exhale without guilt. The kind that lets you stop proving and start trusting. Rest does not mean inactivity, it means movement without anxiety. You begin to work, serve, and build from peace instead of pressure. Can you imagine living without constantly bracing yourself? And then there is divine instruction. Guidance that feels personal, timely, and clear. You begin to sense when to move and when to wait, when to speak and when to remain silent. Direction no longer feels forced, it feels intuitive. Heaven is not shouting, it is guiding. And because your season has shifted, you recognize instruction you once missed. Chosen one, alignment changes how you move through the world. You walk differently, you listen more deeply. You notice openings that once passed unseen because you were too busy surviving. Now you are available to receive, available to respond, available to steward what is being entrusted to you. So ask yourself, what if the access opening now is not something you chase, but something you step into? What if your only responsibility is to stay aligned, present, and willing? This is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of movement without resistance. Stay here in this awareness, because the doors opening next are not random. They are responding to who you have become. And chosen one, heaven does not open access lightly. It opens it intentionally right on time.